Oh, do not tell the priest our plight, for he would call it a sin. But we've been out in the woods all night, a conjuring summer in. We bring you good news by word of mouth, good news for cattle and corn. Sure as the sun come up from the south, by oak and ash and thorn. Sing oak and ash and thorn, good sirs, all on a midsummer's morn. Surely we'll sing of no little thing, in oak and ash and thorn. Hello and welcome to the Cornish Witch podcast. I'm your host Freya, a witch who lives in Cornwall but who isn't a born and bred Cornish maid. I am back for season 3 of the podcast. I just want to say thank you so much to all of my lovely listeners and followers for being so patient with me over the last couple of months. The month of May was a little bit miserable. Felt like I was fighting for my life at certain points, but maybe I'm being a bit dramatic there. But yeah, I am glad to be out of that May madness or May miserableness, and summer is here, and I am just so looking forward to this season and to sort of getting back on the podcast again, recording episodes and reconnecting with all of you guys. So thank you so much for being so patient with me. We have a really lovely episode kicking off season 3. The wonderful Dr. Rebecca Beattie is returning for this special episode, and we are going to be discussing everything Midsummer and Summer Solstice. So I won't ramble on any longer. I will just get straight into it. Hope you all enjoy. Rebecca, welcome back to the Cornish Witch podcast.
Yay! I feel like I should be doing the animal from the Muppets, doing the waving of the arms, going, yay!
Cunning, going excited. I love that.
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
that. Yeah, I send that to a lot of people. It's so lovely to have you back. Thank you for coming back again.
Thank you. It's lovely to be back.
I think our last episode, which was Imolc, was very well received. I got a lot of lovely feedback, and everyone loved listening to it, and listening to you and listening to your teachings and your knowledge and your your wisdom around it. So yeah, it's great to have you back on again to discuss another Sabbath that we've got coming up. Another wheel is turning again.
Absolutely. Keeps turning, doesn't stop.
It does. It keeps turning. So we have Midsummer, or the summer solstice, as some people might see it. There is, I think, another word for it that might be used on the wheel of the year.
I delete in my head. That's it's those other words. I go la 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 la. Don't know what they are. Yes, the other words for some of the Sabbats are quite. Well, we'll get into that in a bit, but they are quite controversial for reasons that I will explain.
Yeah. I think we touched on that a little bit in our last episode together as well.
Did we?
Yeah, I think we did. And someone just decided to. Well, I'll let you refresh my memory when we get into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but Midsummer, as within in your book, The Wheel of the Year. What I love about it is not only do you talk about the history and the folklore and the pagan and Wiccan tellings and history behind Midsummer, but you also go into the scientific side of things. So, where we are rotating around the sun in our solar system, where we are tilting on our axis in our northern or southern hemisphere, and also that in the southern hemisphere, their midsummer is in December compared to ours, which is in June.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things. I was once lucky enough when I was a teenager. I had my best friend at school moved to New Zealand at the end of our GCSE year, and I was lucky enough to be able to go and visit her a little while later. And I happened to be over there for Christmas. And it was really, really strange because Christmas Day we spent it on the beach, and it was a hot day. And, you know, you kind of think it's one of those things that we often forget, that the Southern Hemisphere is entirely different than the Northern Hemisphere. So we have to kind of just be aware that while we're online wishing each other happy midsummer, you know, our Southern Hemisphere brothers and sisters are doing midwinter at that point, which is very different.
Yeah, very different. And it feels quite back to front as well. Like, I mean, I haven't been to the Southern Hemisphere, but I just imagining myself being on the beach at Christmas time or Yule, and it's very, very hot. I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I think it would mess up my equilibrium.
Exactly. I always remember there was a TV series I was watching that was an Australian program. I think it was MasterChef or one of those ones. And they often talk about, you know, Christmas in June, because if you think about what we're celebrating archetypally, so thinking outside of just the pagan box for a minute, but in the middle of winter, we all need a festival that brings us light and cheerfulness and reminds us that the world might be cold and grey and all the rest of it, but that we can bring a bit of cheerfulness to the table. So in Australia, one of the things that they've kind of moved towards doing is having more of an actual midwinter festival in June rather than celebrating Christmas and Yule and all the rest of it in December like we do. But it's one of those discussions that if you hang out with, you know, I was lucky enough to hang out with some Australian witches last summer, and we were talking about how the wheel for them is just completely different, because not only have they got the opposite seasons, but also the seasons behave slightly differently. So, you know, they might not necessarily have spring, summer, autumn and winter all around the world. There might be areas like near the equator where the seasons are just different. You know, they don't necessarily have autumn or spring in quite the same way that we do. And in fact, I think that one of the Australian folk were telling me that they almost have a second spring, because they have spring and then, you know, a few months later the process starts again. So there's something about the Wheel of the Year and the way that we celebrate it. And this is where sometimes you'll get debates with the sort of hardcore Wiccan community that exists online mostly. Thankfully, they're not necessarily in the British Isles; they're elsewhere. But they have this belief that because the Wheel of the Year was set up in a certain way, you should be celebrating it to the letter in the way that it was originally written, which I think is wrong, because we don't have. You've got to adapt. You've got to change and grow, and celebrate what you're seeing where you are.
Absolutely, and it's you've got to work with where you are, how nature is, in that season and in that cycle at that moment in time. There is, it wouldn't make sense if you were living in, like you said, near the equator and it was constantly hot and humid, and you wanted to do, you know, a Yuletide dark ritual. It was not going to make any sense, and you're not going to be able to honor nature in the environment that you're in that way either.
Exactly. And I think when you start going in depth in the Wheel of the Year, when you've kind of been doing it for a few years, what starts to happen is that I know that we're coming up to midsummer here, and that's what we're celebrating. We're very much focused on the sun being at its zenith, and the in nature everything's reaching its absolute height in terms of greenery. And traditionally at midsummer, what we'd be doing is things like harvesting herbs because they're at their absolute peak. But there's also an echo of the opposite festival on the Wheel of the Year. So when you look at the diagram of the wheel, often what you'll find is this is just a faint echo of the opposite festival coming up each time. So when I'm celebrating Beltane, I'm aware that there's an echo of Samhain in there. And when I'm celebrating Midsummer, there's an echo of Midwinter as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. What I find interesting about Midsummer, or here in the UK, the 21st of June, I think I noticed that a lot of people go, "Oh yes, it's the 21st, summer's here," and I'm like, "Oh, it's getting dark now. It's getting a bit. No. I mean, summer started back along. We're past the midpoint.
Exactly. And that comes down to different calendars. So we've got, we're in particularly in Devon and Cornwall, we're on a Celtic, we're a Celtic group. We are folk who emerge from those sort of Celtic traditions, and the Celtic calendars. If you just look to Wales or to Scotland, you'll see the Celtic calendars actually are different to the meteorological ones. And I always have to just pause for a millisecond when I say that word because it's a bit of a mouthful. But the meteorological calendar, i.e., what the scientists are saying, is different than what the Celtic traditional calendar was, which is that midsummer means midsummer. We're halfway through, because we're measuring summer having started on Beltane. That was when we celebrate the start of summer in the pagan year. So it's a really weird one, isn't it? When people are saying, but it's, Spring Watch on telly. What?
Yeah.
Why are we watching Spring Watch? It's summer.
Yeah.
But the rest of the world hasn't quite caught up with that idea yet.
No. For people who are listening and who want to sort of become more aware of the cycles and be more sort of present within nature, what sort of things would you tell people to start looking out for within nature at this time of year?
So the first thing I do is in a class, this is the first question I always ask my students is, what's nature doing where you are? Because it's really important to connect to the nature where you are. So obviously where we are in the southwest, we have a certain group of plants that you can look out for. So the foxgloves are out, the campions are out in the hedgerows. We've got elderflowers just coming into bloom. We've got oxeye daisies absolutely going bonkers this year everywhere. You've got cow parsley. It's all those hedgerow plants.
Yeah.
And the greenery, the one thing I notice at this time of year is I'm out walking with my spaniel companion every morning, and the green is in some places standing shoulder high now. We've got, you're kind of having to get through waves of greenery just to walk on the footpaths. You can start to see green berries as well, starting. So in my garden, I've got raspberry canes and strawberries, and they're in berry, but they're very green at the moment. They still haven't come through. The white thorn and the black thorn that we saw the beautiful blossom on in the spring at Beltane, that's now making way for these really, tight green fruits that aren't going to be ready until the autumn, but they're starting to grow now.
Yeah.
And all those lambs that we were looking at Imolc, thinking they were cute, they're now starting to look like teenage lambs, so they're still leaping about in the fields and being really enthusiastic about everything, but they're starting to look more like sheep. And on where I am, so I'm just on the edge of Dartmoor, we've got the foals being born as well. So that's
Oh,
another thing to look out for, is the little foals and the little calves that are around as well.
yeah. I'm not far from Bodmin Moor, although I'm also
Lovely.
not far from Dartmoor. But yeah, you've got the foals will be out on Bodmin Moor with the ponies there. There's
Yeah.
also a herd of deer
Oh, yeah.
around near oh, what's it called? Near Trippet Stone Circle, there's a
Yeah.
forest, a pine forest, and there's a herd of red deer in there, and so I think the fawns will be, being born as well, which is lovely.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm just seeing so many rabbits everywhere as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. Absolutely. I always love that first thing in the morning, I'm always out quite early. And you get that thing, don't you? It's something I had when I was growing up on Dartmoor, that my parents' house was right next to a field, so I used to literally come out in the mornings and be watching the baby rabbits running around,
Yeah.
which was lovely.
I also noticed the bird song changes as well. The
Yeah,
bird song, like the dawn chorus, really starts to change in the summer months. There's the
yeah.
melody is different. Yeah,
How amazing. Isn't it amazing what you start noticing when you pay attention?
yeah,
You know, all of these things that most people who aren't attuned to nature just walk past and just think, yeah, it's just birds singing. But it's learning those nuances, isn't it? It's
uh,
learning when you can really immerse yourself in nature. I think it's one of those things that the more we do this stuff, the more we learn and the more we
yeah.
become connected to the landscape we're living on.
Absolutely. What can what can people do to help them connect more to the land and also to celebrate uh summer solstice as well?
I think there's a number of things that I would always say is, if you can get out in nature, do. So,
Um,
get out of the town and get out onto the sort of moorland and the headlands. And, we're so lucky where we are to have access to these amazingly stunning places. So one of my favourite things, if I can, and it does require getting up painfully early on Midsummer, but I do like going out really early to watch the sunrise.
yeah,
That's something my partner and I have been doing for the last few years, is actually going up onto the moors and finding a good stone circle or a stone row and watching the sunrise from there, because you get a real sense of, historically, what were our magical ancestors doing when they placed these stones in the places they put them. You
yeah,
start to see, there was we went out last year, and a few years we've gone out and it's been so sort of misty and overcast you can't actually see the sunrise. But there was one year that we did go out and it was perfectly calm weather, and you could see, standing from where we were sitting, which was in the middle of a stone circle, you could actually see the sun rising between two hills.
wow,
And it made me realise that the way that the stone circle had been placed, it indicated there was some kind of alignment there, that there was some ceremonial, tradition that they were celebrating just by how they've placed the stones in relation to the natural world and the sun coming up. So we know,
yeah,
there are lots of places around the world where they're either aligned to either midwinter or midsummer sunrise or sunset, one of those, depending on what their preoccupation was. So, for example, if you go to Stonehenge or Knowth or Maze How, there are various monuments where the cardinal points of the sun were significant, because you can tell by where either the sun is rising or the sun setting, that there's some kind of alignment there with the building. And I kind of think that really gives us a sense of the deep layers of historical, magical, amazingness that we have underneath our feet, that we're not always aware of consciously. And we have no idea what our magical ancestors were celebrating because they didn't write stuff down. It was all an oral tradition. So whatever was in these lands prior to the coming of the Roman army who brought Christianity into the British Isles, and kind of which overtook the pre-Christian pagan faiths that existed here already. And we have no idea what those faiths were saying because they didn't write it down. They, they shared it by word of mouth, which is amazing in some ways. To be part of a mystery tradition that's not written down is quite amazing because that's what modern pagan Wicca is. But it's also that sense of it would have been lovely to have known what it was they were celebrating. But we don't always know these things. And it's also something about, I think as modern humans, we have a kind of expectation that we know everything and that we should have access to all of this knowledge. But I actually quite like there being mysteries in the world. I think it's very reassuring that we don't know as much as we think we do.
Yeah. What do you think they were celebrating? Or
I
what do
think
you
they
like
were
to imagine?
celebrating. I actually imagine that what they were doing was celebrating the seasons in a very similar way to the way we do now as modern pagans. That there's something about celebrating the passing of time.
Yeah.
There's the celebration of, at midwinter, it's very easy to work out what they were celebrating because you've had that moment where the sun is getting lower and lower on the skyline, and the days are getting shorter and shorter and the nights are getting longer. And so we know that there must have been a sense of relief when they turned the corner and the days started getting longer again.
Yeah.
But that also gives us this point with Midsummer, which I think you've already kind of touched on, that we're celebrating the sun reaching its zenith. We're celebrating, and I suspect that's what they were celebrating too, that they were reaching this point of the year where the days are just lovely and long and you get these evenings where you can do stuff. And, it makes our relationship with life and the land very different. But there's also this real kind of very faint edge of sort of feeling like, okay, the solstice means the sun's reached its height. It's going to start shrinking again now. Our daylight hours are going to start shrinking again. So you've got that tinge of sort of sadness amongst the celebration as well.
Yeah, it feels a bit bittersweet in a way.
Yeah, it is bittersweet. I think all of nature is bittersweet because I think that what we're used to doing when we've grown up in monotheistic faiths, one of the things that we're used to is this idea of binary opposites. We're used to things being good or bad. You've got God or the devil, you've got male and female, you've got, this idea that we live at one end of a spectrum or the other. And actually what we're learning as we go further and further down this path of modern paganism and being closer to nature is that those binary oppositions are a false reality.
Yeah.
We don't just have masculine and feminine. We've got a whole range of things in between. And everyone is made up of those kind of non-binary opposites, aren't we? We all have a bit of male, we all have a bit of female, and we all have a bit of midsummer and we all have a bit of midwinter. And I think that it's good to understand where we are in the cycle of time, in the cycle of nature, but also understanding that we don't know everything. There's a lot we don't know.
Yeah, it's very, very grounding, and I love that you've gone and talked about how it is a spectrum, and we're not all, it's not always the opposite ends of the binary.
Yeah,
I think especially with the conversations that we're having these days, around the binary and gender.
Yeah.
There are some days that I'm just not really into my gender, and I just don't want to be like, I just don't want to be female or womanly, and I just want to, perhaps embrace a bit more of my divine masculine side.
Yeah. Yeah,
Doesn't happen very often,
absolutely.
I'll be honest, but there are, some times where I'm just like, I'm not in the mood. I'm not in the mood.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
I've got a bit more testosterone, like rising today wherever I am in my cycle, and I'm a bit more mad and
Yeah.
a bit more angry. I don't know, but yeah,
Well,
we
I
are.
think,
It's very
I
fluid.
think we've got a right to feel quite angry sometimes, haven't we?
Oh, yeah, yes, definitely.
The world is not a fair place. It's not necessarily a comfortable place either. And I think, you've got to go with where you're at, haven't you?
Mm.
Wherever that is, um, you've got to start where you are. So we're coming up to this point of Midsummer. The other theme that's really important is standing in your own light and, having an expression of your own sovereignty. And sometimes that means acknowledging that there are days when you want to rage at the world, and
Mhm.
it's okay. So it is that thing. I think Midsummer is quite a masculine feeling festival. If you look at the planetary associations with Midsummer, we're obviously in a solar festival.
Yeah.
The solar gods tend to be masculine, although I'm just thinking about Sekhmet, who is one of the lovely exceptions to the rule, the Egyptian goddess Sekhmet, who is also a solar goddess, and she is raging. She's the goddess who wears the lioness head,
Yeah.
who to be doped up on beer because she was ripping people's heads off too much. Got too carried away with what she was doing. The sun god Ra had asked her to go and sort out the human problem, and she got carried away, and the only way that they could stop her was to trick her into drinking beer that was dyed red so she'd think it was blood, and that calmed her down. So some of the deities that we can be working with at this time of year are are ones that have a whole range of different emotional responses to the world,
Mm.
really.
I'm just thinking with the goddess Kali.
Yeah.
Kali, could she
Oh,
also
yeah.
be celebrated this time of year because she is the goddess of fire and,
Yes, yeah.
flame and
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. I mean, interestingly, a lot of the solar deities are the ones that wear a solar disc
Mhm.
around the head. So Sekhmet is wears a solar disc because she's affiliated to the sun. And the other one, which is quite weird, that if you want to look at the boy lineup for solar gods, they're all the ones that are wearing either a solar disc or a halo that suggests their enlightened state. So Jesus is a solar deity, which I'm sure a lot of Christians won't thank me for saying. Um, but he's a solar deity. He's representative of an archetype that we have of the sacrificial god. That there are tales in the landscape of us having these sacrificial gods that die for the sake of humanity and then recreate themselves. So we've got Jesus wasn't the first to die and then rise again. We had Dionysus, who was one of those gods. We have Osiris was another, Ra was another. There are some. Mithras is a really significant one, who had a mystery cult that was built around him in Roman times. So if you ever can bring yourself to go up to London, because I know it's a bit of a culture shock sometimes when I go there. I just have to steel myself for going back there. But they've unearthed Mithraeum. There's a Mithraeum in the city of London, which is an old temple to Mithras,
Oh
who had his
wow.
own mystery cult, who had, it was all secret worship, just as modern witchcraft practices are. There are all sorts of things in the world that we've forgotten about, that existed, where these solar gods were being celebrated. So there are all sorts of things. And yes, Carly is, she's the volcanic goddess, isn't she? She's got the fire, the creativity of fire that creates new everything. And just as we're talking, I'm sitting here surrounded by a swathe of smoke because I've lit a charcoal and I'm burning some incense, and I just happen to have chosen the Mars incense.
Oh,
this one, so nice and fiery.
What are the deities within like the Wiccan and pagan side of things can people learn about that is associated with the solstice? So I'm just thinking of like the horned god, or like Pan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Pan is a lovely one. I taught a workshop on Pan last week because we were looking at and this is where sometimes the mythology is quite fluid, because Pan, we associate Pan with those green areas in nature. He was a Greek deity that was born. One of the stories is that he was born in Arcadia, which is the kind of perfect green garden of, the Greek Garden of Eden, if you like, this perfect bit of nature. And Pan he's one of my favourite deities because he does cross over into paganism. So the lovely thing about modern paganism is that if you practice Wicca like me, if you're initiated into the craft, one of the things that we have is we have a pair of deities. So we have male and female. We've got the goddess of the moon, the god of death and resurrection. They have names that are secret, that you only learn once you get initiated into a coven. But they are somewhat akin to gods like Pan, like Cernunnos. The horned god is a bit similar to Cernunnos and Pan. The goddess is similar to Diana and the sort of lunar deities that we have as well. And the worship of those gods goes through the whole wheel of the year. It takes us right through the cycle. But there are links that have been drawn between ancient deities like Pan, who was, part of ancient Greek mythology, and the modern god as well. And it's that lovely sense that you have with Pan. I mean, one of the things that we were talking about in my class on this last week was I was reading to the folk in the class a chapter from the Wind in the Willows that often gets forgotten about. There's a chapter called The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, and Kenneth Grahame was one of a group of writers in the early 20th century who emerged before modern paganism. So it's before the repeal of the Witchcraft Act in 1951. But they're so proto-pagan, it's unbelievable. You could think you're reading this stuff and thinking, yeah, this is pagan. This is really pagan. And there's this beautiful chapter in The Wind in the Willows, which often gets edited out, called The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, where the mole and the rat go in a boat looking for the baby otter who's gone missing, and they encounter Pan in a forest clearing. And there's this beautiful description of how they encounter this very lovely god who, they're awestruck when they see him. And there are all sorts of things about Pan that we take associations, like the word panic comes from Pan, because that it was thought in ancient Greece, if you stumbled upon Pan, you would have this sense of panic that rose up in you. But he also has that gentle side to him where he can be really soothing as well with the music and the dancing. But he's got this mischievous side to him, which I think goes really nicely with Midsummer, that we're all out in the hedgerows and in the fields and on the moors and on the, on the coastlines, dancing under the moon for Midsummer. And it feels like there's a mischievousness to it, which I think is good. It's a good thing we should be celebrating.
Yeah, it's jovial and fun and
Yeah,
cheeky.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And if we're looking at those other deities that are known as solar gods, the Dionysian rites, my God. If you ever attend a Dionysian rite, which is, um, our modern equivalent, are probably a pale imitation of what was going on in ancient times, but it is really ecstatic. There's dancing and wine and, singing and drumming, and it's sort of, people getting into this Dionysian frenzy.
yeah.
Which we don't get the chance to do that very often, sort of let our hair down and really, have a good time.
I remember studying a little bit about Dionysus at university, and that he was the god of wine and the arts
Yeah, yeah,
and theatre, and
yes.
just sounded like pure hedonism, really.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Pure hedonism. And it is that kind of, his followers were seen as being the wild, particularly the women. It was the wild women that followed him, um, that, that they were known for these kind of the religious ecstasy and the kind of sense of revelry that you don't get in quite the same way in monotheisms, that they're
Mm.
kind of very sedate by comparison. But it's that, there is a sense of we don't kind of connect to that wild side very often. And I think if you never connect to it, it's it's there are safe places that you can do this. So, Dionysian rites were seen as places that you would connect to that kind of sense
Yeah,
of wild, the pleasure and the festivity and the madness of it. Um, but it can be unpredictable and it's unbridled. And, where else in the world do we get access to connecting to that unbridled sense of ourselves? And that's one of the things that I think the Wiccan god, or Cernunnos, if you work with Cernunnos as a kind of alternative, he is seen as being that kind of connecting to your wild side.
yeah. I think perhaps, when we're children, there is a sense that we connect to that wild side.
Yeah,
We do, we have our imaginations, we run around, we're very playful, we're very free, and we're very innocent. Um, and then that gets lost as we grow up, which is
yeah, yeah,
a
we do.
shame.
Yeah, we lose that enchantment as well, don't we? I think that's the bit that I appreciate the most about living a modern pagan life, is that it enables us to reconnect to that sense of enchantment that we lost when we left childhood behind and went into adulthood. Everything got very serious and
Yeah.
earnest, and I kind of think whenever I encounter something that's very earnest, it always makes me want to reconnect to that childlike side that sort of laughs at it and sort of thinks, oh yeah, that's ridiculous. Um, we need, I do think we need to reconnect to that enchantment. That's what makes life livable, I
Mhm.
think. Life is hard enough without making it more so by, having these rules about you have to sit there and be polite, and and your worship needs to be really sedate and dull. And I kind of, for me, I think one of the things about modern paganism is being able to really kind of open up the possibilities of what does spiritual fulfillment look like to you. um and for some people it's sort of more in the mind. For
Yeah.
others of us, it's more in the body.
Yeah. In your book, you talk about sovereignty as a theme of Midsummer. Um, how how do you explain sovereignty for people who aren't sure what it means or what it is? For me, I kind of see it as because I think I still struggle with it. I see it as sovereignty as like sort of almost being at one with yourself, like, and then with your higher self as well. Like you're completely
Yeah,
sovereign and grounded. Um,
yeah.
but I also still find it a little bit confusing at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a few things we're not trained to, particularly if you're female, you're trained to sort of conform and be quiet and,
Mm.
um, put your needs second to everybody else's. And so in my head, sovereignty gives us a number of things. It enables us to, first of all, stop for a minute and just recognize what you're doing that's amazing. So think about, what have you achieved in the last 6 weeks since your last festival, or what have you achieved in the last turn of the wheel of the year? If you want to widen it out, what have you
Mhm.
done in the last year? What are you really proud of? So there's that sense of, what are you proud of? What are you good at? And also, this idea, sovereignty is also about celebrating the little things. So it doesn't have to be, we don't have to stick to the Protestant work ethic where, okay, what work projects have I completed? No, it's not about that. It's like, where have I been a good friend? Where have I been a good sister? Or where have I, really made somebody's life experience different as a result of being involved with them? What have I done that's different, that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't there? So I think, you don't always have to think about sovereignty as being a project that you've done. You can think of it as being softer than that, that it's about the human condition and how we support each other. But I think also, if you're anything like me, and I think a lot of us are, when you finish an achievement, the next thing you do is think, what next? What next? What am I doing next? So, I've just finished a book which is going to press, and I'm already thinking, what next? What's the next one I'm writing? Um, and I think sometimes we just have to pause and allow ourselves to celebrate that thing that we've just completed before we move on. So it's
Yeah.
about, you know, what have you done that you're really proud of this year? And there's something about, in a celebration, one of my favorite ways to celebrate Midsummer is to have a ritual where you are working with the divine. So you choose your god that you want to work with, whoever that is. And one of the ceremonies I've written into the book is having this fourfold process when you're worshipping a god, that if you've got an altar space, go to that altar space, and the 4-step process is to greet the god in as many names as you can. So whatever names you can think of, you might want to write them down first, or you might just want to speak from the heart. Remind them all of the things that you've done for him or her in the last year. So mention all the things that you've achieved, the things that you didn't always take time to celebrate, however small they were, mention them. And at that point, you can also request a favour for them for the coming 12 months, and then thank them for, being there and supporting you. You might offer a formal act of devotion that you'll do in their name over the next turn of the wheel, and something that you're going to dedicate to that particular deity that you're working with.
Mhm.
And then I'll often also bring in poetry. There are lovely poems that you can find. The gods love poetry, so if you read them a poem, they're often very happy as a result. So it doesn't always have to be like bells and whistles and all the rest of it. It can be a small thing as
Yeah.
well.
For those who don't work with deities,
Yeah,
and they want to still celebrate Midsummer,
yeah.
what other rituals can they do that wouldn't involve sort of working with the deity if they don't feel ready for that yet?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of think you can choose to work with the spirit of nature.
Yeah.
You can choose to work with your higher self as well.
Mhm.
So depending on how you see your relationship with the universe, because, I realize not everybody has an active relationship with deity, but you might have a sense of wanting to celebrate nature instead. So you can kind of um, address your what we've just talked about either to nature or address it to your higher self. So
Mhm.
just remind your unconscious self, because when we're working magically, or when we're working in this kind of mystical energy spaces, what you are doing is working with your unconscious mind.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need to remind ourselves, actually, oh yeah, I did that, didn't I? So, make a pact with your unconscious mind that it's going to help you create a more magical future or a more magical cycle going forward.
I love that because I find the unconscious mind incredibly fascinating.
Yeah,
I was listening to a podcast. I can't remember if it was this year or last year, where someone who was a professional in like
yeah,
consciousness and unconsciousness, um,
yeah.
they said that 90% of the mind is the unconscious,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
and then we only a small part of our consciousness is we use our
Yeah,
consciousness as like 10%.
yeah.
So it's like our unconscious mind
It's
I mean, I
magical.
still have to get my head around it, but it's
Yeah,
incredible, like, that
it
we
is. It is. It's flipping miraculous when you put it that way. I mean, often, um, psychologists will often use, I mean, this is something, a lot of the big names in psychology used was the metaphor of the iceberg, that you've
Mhm.
got this tiny little 10% poking up above the surface, which is your conscious brain. And that's the bit that does language and it does logic, and it can cope with about, um, you know, plus or minus about 7 things before it starts going into overwhelm. So,
Yeah.
we all know that feeling of panic that comes when you're trying to multitask and you're thinking, "Oh God, they said women were good at multitasking. Well, I can't do it." You have that moment of panic where you're thinking, "Shit, what am I gonna do? I've got to do this." And you have that moment of panic, and then if you can just let go of that, the unconscious mind, by comparison, deals with millions of bits of information every second, and it
Mhm.
just filters them out, and it sorts out what you need to know. It tells you what you need to pay attention to. It's the part of your mind that does learning, it does dreaming. So if you're somebody that keeps a dream journal, it's your unconscious mind that's doing that. The complication with the unconscious is that it doesn't do language in the same way. So it doesn't do words. It does sensory information. So when we're spell crafting, the reason we have these spell ingredients, like all of those herbs and the coloured candles and, the altar cloths and the incense smells and all of that kind of thing, the whole reason we use those is because we're communicating with our unconscious mind,
Mhm.
and it's our unconscious mind that does the magic.
Yeah.
It's the unconscious mind that does the creativity, that, writes the books, that comes up with the ideas, that paints the pictures, that when you go into a state of flow, it's because your unconscious mind is taking over and your conscious mind at that point is taking a back seat, which is what we want it to do, to allow you to sort of do the creative stuff. So I think that what we forget when we're talking about sovereignty, the thing to really remember and hold on to is that what I mean when I say sovereignty is your own self and
Yeah.
how magical you are, because we don't celebrate how magical we are. Unless you're somebody that's got a deeply significant personality disorder, most of us keep that side of ourselves hidden.
Mhm.
Um, and Midsummer is one of the points in time where you're actually invited to say, actually, these are the things I'm really proud of. This is what I'm good at. This is the magic that I've achieved in the last 6 months or
Yeah.
year or whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah. Well, that's really nice because that's not always easy as human
No,
beings for us to do. So
exactly.
to have, yeah.
Particularly for women as well, particularly
Mm.
for women and, non-binary folk, we do tend to be shoved in a corner, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah. So I really like that you can use Midsummer to completely dedicate it to yourself, which is lovely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an act of self-care, and it's an act
Yeah.
of, you can, the act of dedicating yourself, you can, if you wanna get really archetypal about things, how the thing that I love the most about modern paganism is nobody tells you what to believe.
Mm.
So you're not told that there is a God and, there's God the Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit and all of that stuff. We don't have a book that tells us this is our belief system, this is what you have to follow. With modern paganism, the other aspect of sovereignty is you don't need a priest because you are your own priestess or priest.
Mhm.
You don't need somebody as an intercessor. You're the one that drives the boat really in terms of your own spiritual life.
Yeah.
And that act of just taking a moment and saying, okay, I commit to supporting myself going forward. I'm going to be my best supporter. I'm going to look after myself. I'm going to cheer myself on and allow myself to flourish in a way that I haven't always done in the past.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
just allow yourself to step forward.
Absolutely. You've got some lovely sort of sovereignty self-care rituals in your book as well for Midsummer, such as,
Yeah.
outdoor swimming, um
Yes.
making sure it's safe when you're doing your outdoor swimming as well.
Yes. Yes. I'm
um
laughing because I've done that not safely and ended up having terrible time being very unwell for swimming somewhere that wasn't clean.
I know
So
it's
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
pick your spot. Pick
Pick
your
your
spot.
spot, do your research. Yeah, make sure you're
Exactly.
safe. But yeah, things like
Exactly.
cooking a solar inspired meal using all of like,
Yeah.
the Mediterranean flavors, food
Yeah.
for sort of different temperate climates, or just having
Exactly.
a barbecue to honor the longest day, like something nice and
Yeah.
simple, which is great like that. You've got a really nice recipe for dandelion orangeade, which I
Oh, I love
definitely
that
want to
one.
try.
Yeah,
Dandelions are so good for you as well.
they are.
Like, they're
They're really good for
underrated.
you. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's something you can do on your own or in a group as well. I once did the dandelion orangeade cup with my little group of witchlets when I used to do in-person classes in London before COVID. We had a group of um, sort of seekers, young seekers that were kind of curious about witchcraft, and we used to meet every month in a basement of a bookshop in London, and we'd learn about an aspect of witchcraft, and then we'd have a ritual, and we'd celebrate each other, and really kind of it was part self-help group, part witchy group, part class. Um, and one of the occasions we made the dandelion orangeade cup together.
Mm.
So, we all sat round in a circle and we made the drink and then added the dandelions, and everybody in that circle stirred in their intention to that jug of orangeade, whatever it was they wanted to manifest or bring about, or what they wanted to celebrate in terms of their sovereignty.
Yeah.
um, and then we all drank it as a celebration as part of the end of the ritual.
That's so lovely.
So it was nice. Yeah, it's good. It's
Yeah.
good having things that you can do together or alone.
Mhm.
It's useful having the quiet rituals that you can do at home and in the privacy of your own spaces. But sometimes it's good to be in a group as well.
Yeah, yeah, and to
Yeah.
have that connection and community, um,
Yeah.
which I think is something that, we we all long for, and,
Yeah.
we can get so caught up within ourselves and just with life that we forget about that, and then
Yeah.
our unconsciousness and our body starts to yearn for that connection again and community, and brings it to the forefront, of your mind. It's like, what do I need right now? I need my coven, or I need my sisters, or I just need,
Yes.
I just need
Yeah.
connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Flower crowns are always really big hit this time
Yes.
of year.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and you've got a lovely method in the book on how to make some flower crowns, which I absolutely
Yeah.
loved, weaving a midsummer
Yeah.
crown.
They're lovely things to make because, again, it's something you can do either in a group or on your own. But when I used to celebrate Midsummer with my coven in London, what we would do is often weave the flower crowns as part of the preparation for the circle, and then we would take that forward and use the flower crowns as part of the ceremony, and actually crowning ourselves in our sovereignty. That was part of the thing, because we don't get to wear crowns very often. So again, it's one of those things that you can bring in.
Yeah, I do. It does make me think of the film. I don't know if you've seen it, Midsummer, but it's called Midsummer.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it does make me
Absolutely.
think of that. But I do. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that film. It's fantastic. Um, and actually, that was going to make me wanted to ask about sort of Scandinavia and more European
Yeah.
celebrations around Midsummer as well, because they celebrate it on a different day to us. If
They
that's
do.
right,
They
yeah.
do. Yeah. And so the thing to remember, because it can feel like, oh God, I've got the wrong date. I'm such a crap witch. I don't do things on the right dates. The thing to remember is that there are, as we said at the beginning of the session, there's different calendars that give you different points. So in the European countries, so when we look to some of our particularly Northern European um, brothers and sisters, what they're doing is having Midsummer on a slightly different day. I think
Mhm.
is it the 24th? I always forget
24th,
which
yeah.
yeah, this idea that Midsummer happens on the 24th. And again, it's just different calendars. It's just different ways that people mark things, whereby one particular calendar will call Midsummer 24th. Some of them will say it's 21st. Some of them it will say, something else entirely. The thing that I always think about when I'm thinking about, have I got the right date? Am I doing this on the right date? Our magical ancestors didn't have calendars. That was something that was introduced much later. Um, and so they wouldn't have had this sense of, yes, it's definitely the 21st of June. So I always say on or around is fine.
Mm,
Most uh, Wiccan covens that I know will celebrate on the nearest Friday or Saturday. They won't
yeah.
necessarily meet on the day of the thing. So there's this sense of, with the Wheel of the Year Sabbats, I think that energy kind of lingers for a while. It's not just a one day event. It's a time that we go through. That's the period that we're entering into that feels like this. But the midsummer in Northern Europe is often Christian based as well, because it's merged with the feast of St. John the Baptist,
Ah,
which
okay.
is, that's not our bag anyway. But so it doesn't really matter. But that's often what's being celebrated is in Scandinavia, is that sense of the 24th. And then in the British Isles also, you've got the traditions that emerged from church law, and Midsummer Day would coincide as one of the quarter days for legal and agricultural calendars. So when we were all uneducated and working in agricultural settings, and we couldn't all necessarily read and write and count up stuff, we had these traditional days in the calendar where you had to pay your rent to your landlord, and the quarter day was one of them, for Midsummer, which was June the 24th. So these things kind of move and they change and they get absorbed into another calendar, and then we, go back to an older calendar, and it's often something that is fluid. I don't think it's fixed.
Mm-hmm. What are your plans for Midsummer this year? I know you said that you're going to go and watch the sunrise.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Which is that's generally what I do. Is I'll go on the morning. I'll wake my partner up really early, and we'll go up and go up to the moors. And there's a spot up there that I particularly love visiting, where I'll see the Midsummer in. It Most of the festivals, there tends to be a kind of rolling group of celebrations. So I'll also have a midsummer circle with my coven as well. So we'll gather in indoors, because that's what we tend to do for those, because they happen at night, and we gather in one person's home. It's usually my home, and we'll celebrate together as a coven. This year that will be not happening on the 21st, because I'm actually travelling on the 21st this year. So I'm going off to meet with a gathering of friends in Europe. So I shall be on the road at that point. So I'll just be having a nod to the Midsummer and celebrating early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think Midsummer, if people are going to go by the date, then the 21st is on a Sunday this year.
It is, yeah. It
Yeah.
is indeed.
So
Yeah.
I think again, for the majority of us who probably do work a 9 to 5, we'll be
Yeah.
celebrating on the Friday or the Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you might do the sunrise on the 21st, but
Mhm.
if you haven't been celebrating too hard the night before.
Yeah. If you haven't gone totally like sort of complete Dionysus themed. Or
Exactly.
maybe you just
Exactly.
completely stay up the whole way
Yeah,
through.
absolutely. Yeah, that's the other option.
I don't
Yeah.
think I have the stamina for that anymore. Like maybe 10
Yeah.
years ago, but not anymore.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's one of those things. If you have been to the Dionysian rites, then you'll be forgiven for not seeing the sunrise. But it's there if you want it.
Yeah. Rebecca, thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed having you back on the show and
My
talking about
pleasure. It's
um
been great.
another turn of the wheel. It's been I absolutely love it. And thank you so much for bringing all of your knowledge and wisdom and rituals and sharing them on this episode. It's been absolutely amazing,
Oh,
and I hope my listeners are able to take a lot away from it and do some sort of self-love and sovereignty. I can't say the word
yeah.
sovereignty work and self-care, and
Yes.
take the time in Midsummer to be kind to themselves and celebrate themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if anything, if nothing else, that's what the Wheel of the Year is there for.
Mhm.
It's just to give us that moment of pause and the ability to just take a breath, because
Yeah,
life is busy.
it is absolutely, absolutely. And I hope to have you back on again to talk about
Yeah,
another Sabbath. That would be amazing.
absolutely. Yeah, that would be fab.
I would love that. Thank you so much. It's been an
Cool.
absolutely lovely to have you back. And I hope to have you back on again very soon.
Thank
And
you.
have a
See you
wonderful
soon.
midsummer. I hope you all enjoyed listening to this episode on Summer Solstice with Rebecca Beattie. It was such a pleasure having her back on the show, and I have to do more episodes with her every time that the wheel turns again to celebrate more Sabbats. And hopefully you've got some lovely ideas and rituals and things that you would like to do to celebrate the solstice this weekend as well. Let's move on to our Witch Weekly events, where I let you know what witchy or spiritual events are happening in and around South Devon and Cornwall. Starting with local covens that are seeking new members. So if you're a solitary witch looking to join a coven, this might be for you. Ros and Booker, one of Cornwall's longest established covens, hold meetings in North Cornwall and the Devon-Cornwall border. Applicants are welcome to introduce themselves via email and come visit their website for more information. The Cunning Grove is a witch and occult shop based in Plymouth. They currently hold the Coven of the Sacred Grove. They are a diverse group of witches from different paths that come together to learn and support each other. Within their coven, they break the year down into 4 seasons. The physical coven meets on a Tuesday and Thursday nights fortnightly. They also have an online coven with spaces available. Everyone is in a group together, and each week they drop different techniques and teachings from PDFs, slides, and videos. Joining the covens comes with a range of benefits. You can get money off the shop and services, and you can also make use of the coven library, which is for local members only. To join the physical coven, it's £30 per person, and if you want to join the online coven, that's £15. If you would like to get in touch, you can message them through their Instagram page or Facebook page. I've also added their email address in the show notes. Seren from Serendipity Healing holds 3 women's circles. These are Tuesday in Abbot Scarswell, Wednesday in Torquay, and Thursday in Totnet, and they are all from 7 p.m. until 9 p.m. Participants can choose the date and venue that suits them, and she covers the same information in each one. They happen every 3 weeks, so you can celebrate the Sabbath and connect to nature's cycles. And then you will have a session between each Sabbath to look inward. She teaches a variety of modalities. These include somatic movement, guided meditations, tarot and oracle cards, witch runes, exploring crystals, herbs, journaling, creative expression through arts and crafts, Reiki, Sekhem energy, drumming and sound, goddess work with the archetypes, meaningful ritual and ceremonies, and lots more. Local witchy and spiritual events. Continuing with the Cunning Grove, on Wednesdays they hold a Witch and Stitch, which is a free weekly crochet, knitting and witchcraft session. And on Saturday mornings, they hold a free Witch and Brew session, which is a social with tea, talk, and it has a teaching focus. And you can find out more information via their website, which is linked in the show notes. Looking ahead to this weekend for Solstice celebrations, starting on Friday, the 19th of June, Cairn Crescent Crow is holding a Solstice weekend celebrating the Cornish sacred landscape. This will be at the Union Hotel in Penzance. It's running over the entire weekend, and there are over 20 artists, talks, rituals, sound performances, and alternative DJs. On Friday, doors open at 5 p.m. until 9 p.m. Saturday is open from 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. and Sunday opens 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. and Sunday is also a neurodivergent friendly day. Tickets are available on a pay-what-you-can basis, starting from £2.50, and profits will go to supporting organisations working with Cornwall's ancient sites. And you can get the tickets on Cairn Crescent Crow's website, which I have linked for you in the show notes. On Friday the 19th of June, Launceston Ghost Tours are going to be holding a ghost walk in Tavistock. This starts at 8 p.m. at Bedford Square in Tavistock, and the tickets are linked in the show notes. On Saturday, the 20th of June, Emma Jane Saunders, who runs Dragon Goddess Healings, will be doing tarot card readings at Bude and North Cornwall Golf Club. This is from 11 a.m. until 3 p.m, and a percentage of the proceeds are donated to the Children's Hospice in the Southwest. Also on Saturday, and I hope I'm pronouncing this properly, and if I'm not, I am so sorry for butchering it. So Saturday, the Agaton Social Club, or is it Agaton Social Club? I'm so sorry. But yes, the Agaton or Agaton Social Club in Plymouth is hosting the Willow Tree Psychic Fair's Mind, Body and Spirit Fair. This is from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. and there will be tarot card readers, psychic mediums, healing, well-being, hypnotherapy, spiritual and witchy gifts, crystals, crafts and much more. And then on Sunday, summer solstice, from 5 p.m. until 9 p.m. And once again, I'm really sorry about my pronunciations here, but it's either the Chyan or Chyan community field in Penryn. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys, is holding a solstice gathering. It is a relaxed, family-friendly evening in nature to celebrate the solstice, and I have gone and linked their website in the show notes. If you have an upcoming witchy or spiritual event, and you would like me to do a shout out for your event on the show, then please contact me. My details are in the show notes, and you can find me at the Cornish Witch Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. That is everything I have for you for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Cornish Witch Podcast. This podcast is an independent personal project created outside of my professional life. It exists as a space for conversation with witches, spiritual practitioners, and those walking their own paths, sharing lived practice, ritual, experience, and folklore often rooted here in Cornwall and the land itself. If you value these conversations and would like to support the continuation of the podcast, there is a voluntary link in the show notes. Listening will always remain free and there is no expectation to contribute. Whether you support here, listen quietly, or carry these stories onward by sharing them with others, thank you. Your presence honours the craft and keeps these tellings alive. May these stories find you when they are meant to. And until next time, may the path rise to meet you.